Hi everybody. My name's Graham Bird. I'm the head of digital communications at Cardiff University. I've got with me here Jenny, who's head of our content team, and David, who is one of our web developers. And we're going to be talking about how we move to a single source of course information at the university. I'm going to set the scene, and then David's going to talk about how we did it, and Jenny's going to cover the content production process. Really where this came from was, as I'm sure most of you, if not all of you know, the CMA regulations for higher education came in October 2015, and they specifically said that we need to give students clear, accurate and timely information about their course so that they could make a decision on where to study. Now, what that means for us, we have over 350 undergraduate courses. Our website is very large. The durable medium requirements that were coming in, which meant that we needed to provide the course information in a PDF, along with the other applicants' information, it was a new requirement, so we had to provide that, and all to the October 2015 deadline. So the university formed a working group to look at this, the CMA compliance, as an issue. And as part of that, we checked the website using a tool called Site Improve. This allowed us to do things like spot where fees were replicated in places they shouldn't be, or look at potentially outlandish claims and get those spotted and corrected if necessary. But the biggest thing that we realised was that with the durable medium requirement, the course information that was on the website and the course information that was in our student record system was out of step, and that was a problem because the durable medium was going to be generated by our student record system and sent out automatically with offer letters. It was to varying degrees, but it was serious enough that we needed to take a good look at it. Where we were starting from was that we'd already centralised course information from where it had been scattered around our school sites, but because of the Unistats requirements a couple of years previously, we had centralised course information into one place. So that was good. We also knew that data was already flowing to an API from our student record system about courses. So although it wasn't an API that was suited for our purposes, we knew that the data flows were in place. So that was a win. The Welsh language standards that we need to adhere to, we were working to meet those. So that was something else that was going on at the time. We were aware that the IT department were bringing in a new API platform, and so that was really an opportunity to kind of get on board with that and use that for the purpose we had in mind. And we were also in the middle of a big project to rationalise and redesign our website and move it onto a new content management system. In terms of content management systems, just for student recruitment, we had information in 5 different systems. So most of the website was on a very old version of Rhythmix. We had a bespoke system developed by a local agency doing our undergraduate marketing pages, another bespoke system which actually had our course information in it. The new parts of the website, the new migration that we were doing was to Squiz Matrix, and the actual authoritative course information was in our student records system. As I'm sure you realise, there's a lot of issues with that, duplication of cost, the risk of inaccuracy, and that was the key one for us because of the CMA compliance requirements. Having that potential inaccuracy over so many systems was a big problem. Points of failure, etc. There were 3 different designs in play. This is the old Rhythmix system. This was one of the bespoke systems, and this was the Squiz Matrix system that we were bringing in. As well as that, the legacy systems weren't mobile friendly, and Welsh language support across those, so being able to publish bilingually was spotty if there at all. And to add insult to injury, this was all spread across 7 different domains. And I'm sure you can see from that, yeah, there's the Picard facepalm moment. It was terrible for SEO. The 4 at the bottom there were all duplicating the same content. We were really not in good shape from that perspective. So this is what it looked like in terms of the systems involved. As I mentioned, the actual course information we were really interested in was in the student record system down there at the bottom, and we needed something to resolve that. So I'm now going to hand over to David, who's going to talk to you about the actual implementation and how we did it.
Hi, so I'm a web developer at Cardiff, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the SITS data and the API we used to retrieve it, the development work that we carried out in Squiz, and how we made sure it performed well. So SITS is our student record system. It also holds our course data, and against each course we have a number of description fields, and these include overview, how will I be taught, and distinctive features, to name a few. We also have several fields such as percentage taught in Welsh, the course fees, and core and optional modules. So at Cardiff we have a data hub, and this is just a central data repository. Many systems across the university feed data into it, and then others connect to it for that data. And we use WSO2, which is an API manager, which is an open source API publisher. And it provides the endpoints and allocates API keys and controls caching, amongst other things. And WSO2 has access to the data that's held in the data hub. And the data integration team built a JSON endpoint to retrieve the SITS data. The endpoint takes several parameters, which allows us to retrieve the right data for each course. So we can send the course code, the entry year, module year, and the language we want the information returned in. It took quite a lot of massaging to get the JSON output to a clean and predictable way, and this is because at Cardiff we have many different variations of courses, such as courses with placement years, sandwich years, preliminary years, and NHS funded courses, and all these were stored in SITS differently. So it took quite a bit to get it tidy. So here's an example request to our API, and as you can see, the module year and the entry year are different, and this is because the modules are not finalized in SITS at the same time as the course information. So this just allows us the flexibility to make sure we're requesting the correct information. And this is a really good example of a requirement that we didn't discover at the start of the project. It was quite late on. And then this is just an example response that we get back from the API, and you can see the sort of description blocks that we mentioned earlier, and other information such as the intake dates, the course name, the duration, and stuff like that. So Squiz Matrix is our content management system, and as well as storing information in SITS, we hold minimal information about each course in Squiz as data records. So we hold the course code and configuration settings like the year of entry and module year, so this just allows us to request the correct information for that course from the API. And we also have additional marketing content such as videos and testimonials, and we hold these in Squiz because we can then use these on various other parts of the website, so it's kind of reusable. And this is kind of what we've built within Squiz. This is how it all comes together. So Squiz is really good at connecting to external services like APIs. And one of the ways of doing this is to use a REST resource JavaScript asset. And this allows you to use server-side JavaScript processing to render the response to the page. So when a user actually visits one of our courses, they visit the data record, and then the presentation of this data record is controlled by what Squiz call a paint layout, and you can just think of this as a template. So the paint layout then calls the REST resource asset and provides the course code and other parameters that we need. and this goes off to the API and retrieves the response. We also load in several JavaScript utilities, such as Mustache and Lodash, just to make it easier to work with and to maintain going forward. So this is what the REST response resource asset looks like within Squiz. And as you can see, we load in Lodash and Mustache and a few other the templates. And all the course data from the API is stored within the REST response object, which is on line 8, I think. So we do quite a lot of processing to build up the data, to build up a data object that we then pass to Mustache to render the finished HTML. And one of the really cool things about the resource asset is you can use Squiz keywords to get metadata from the data record and also other parts of the system that you can then use in the JavaScript later on. So yeah, that's quite handy. So this is an example of one of our courses, and the sort of paragraphs of the text are the descriptions coming from SITs, and then the image and the quote towards the bottom and the call to action on the right are all metadata assigned to the data records in Squiz, so we can use them both. So every course is cached for 2 hours, and this makes sure that the page loads faster, but also covers brief outages of the API. It also means that we reduce the load on Squiz and WSO2. We also use Funnelback, which is an enterprise search system. So as well as providing us a course search, we also use it for course listings, such as the A to Z page or courses by school. Initially, we planned to use Squiz for this, but we realized we'd have to hit the API so many times just to render the page that it just wouldn't be good. So yeah, Funnelback crawls the full set of courses and stores enough information about each course so that we can use it to power research and also to render listing pages. It's really fast and it doesn't need a connection to the API after the crawl is finished. And it's worth mentioning that we can throttle Funnelback so it doesn't hit the API too hard. Just yeah, nice and smooth. Yeah, and so this is what it looks like now. We've got that middle bit, and it's working really well for us, and it's quite simple. And for example, since launch, we've made several improvements to the design based on user feedback. It was really straightforward to roll out across all courses because it was just one design to update. Yeah, so I'll hand you over to Jenni now. We'll talk to you about the content process.
Thanks, David. So I guess after that bit, I'm like the light relief. For those of you who didn't understand that, I'm here with you. So, I mean, in terms of talking about the content and how we did that, I'll just cover sort of who was involved, how we developed the course content, and some of the pain points and the lessons that we learned in this process. So Graham mentioned that a CMA working group was set up to manage CMA as a whole and how we looked at it. This group had a number of different stakeholders, and that included a couple of senior stakeholders. So we had the Director of Communications and Marketing. We also had the Academic Registrar. This was really helpful for us. Having those senior stakeholders meant that we had good coverage, we had good access in terms of making decisions and deciding how to move along with things. Sometimes it was difficult. I think there were lots of decision makers involved in the process, and that obviously can sometimes be tricky. You've got conflicting sort of ideas or priorities. But I think in this case it was essential. It was a high-risk project. It was something that we had to do, so we needed to have those people involved. So where we started, our content was not fit for purpose. Our course content was not fit for purpose before we did this project. The first thing that we had to enable was an initial review of all the course content. This was college-led. It had some input from the CMA group and from us, but the thing we actually had to do was to build a preview, because there was content in our student record system, SITS, there was content on the current website, and then we had to present this to the people who were going to review this. So David, but using Squiz, built a report that people could go into. They could click on their course, and what they would get was their student records content, their current content, and then at the bottom, the new template. So they're able to look at this and pull it all together into one thing. We were trying to make the process easier. We have 27 academic schools at Cardiff University, so we needed to, really try and kind of keep them happy within the process. And within that review, we were also involved in the review in terms of trying to go through and give advice on what we thought was wrong with the courses, and obviously sensitively, trying to talk about how things have been written. we, at the same time as we were doing the review, well, just before the review, we had to agree a template that was going to be the new template. So this would be all of the fields that were held within the students' record system, renaming any of those, adding new ones, merging any that needed to be merging, thinking about the marketing information that had to sit within that. That template was agreed through the CMA group with input across that CMA group. So now we have the template, everybody's had a look at their initial courses, now we have to start the rewrite of this 350 plus courses. So we have 3 colleges who manage the, well, I say manage, they don't manage the academic schools, I'll be in so much trouble for saying that. The 3 colleges, they have administrative function and they have communications function within each of those colleges, and they look after each of those sort of groups of schools. So the colleges were responsible for overseeing the rewrite, they worked very closely with the academic schools, and initially that's the position that we started in. Going through the project on a very short deadline, it was realised that there was not enough time. Some of the academic schools were in really busy periods. They were going through institutional review or various different things that meant that was going to be a big problem for them. So the CMA group decided to resource some copywriters. So we brought in external copywriters to help with the content, which all seemed like a really good idea until we realised that actually something we hadn't done was given them a really strict style guide. So we had to kind of go back a couple of steps, and what digital communications did was to look at our existing style guides for the rest of the website and pull that into a bit more of a descriptor of, well, what should this look like for course content, and give them a couple of examples of what we saw was best practice course presentation. Once all of the course rewrite has been done, once we've got the style guide that's followed, we then do our QA process. But the QA process before launch involved not just us, but also the academic schools. So the academic schools reviewed their courses to make sure that they were happy with the end product, that the work the copywriters and the colleges had done fit their needs, that it accurately described their courses. Again, thinking about CMA, making sure that we're not making any claims about the course that aren't actually true. Then digital communications did a review of the courses, and the review from our perspective, we would look at things, we were looking at things like even just the case of making sure that all the links were working, that the style guide was followed, there was no typos, all of that kind of thing. Obviously, quite a big process. So the pain points. Obviously, as you can guess, it was such a huge rewrite process, 350 plus courses. I don't know how many of you in this room are probably in a similar situation when you get to that. I know Richard's nodding away. For us, the template changed halfway through the process. This was a really quick project. It was reacting to regulations that came in, and we realised that the university was at a really high risk. Because of that, we didn't really truly look at all the full requirements and exactly what would be needed at the template when we initially created it. That meant that partway through the process, the template had to be adjusted, which meant then we had to get out to all of the academic schools and all of the colleges and say, hang on a minute, that template you've got is wrong. Here's your new template. So that was a sticky point in the middle of the project. Consistency was really hard to maintain. Having academic schools, colleges, all the different people writing content, that meant that whereas we are really keen to get this brand consistency and this tone of voice that really tells our students what it's like to be at Cardiff University, that wasn't always the case. Some of the course templates are also used for course approval. So obviously they are written from an academic point of view because they're written initially by academics. We also had the issue of how far does a QA go? We could have reviewed these courses so many times, edits kept happening, changes kept happening. From a digital communications perspective, I think sometimes we can be too panicky, and mentioning before about letting it go, I think that was something that came to us and we had to sort of let it go and let it get out there. We translated 33% of our courses into Welsh. So the requirement for us as a Welsh university, we have requirements for the Welsh language scheme, and in this case it was any courses that had an element that was available to be studied in Welsh had to be translated. So we also had to add that into our process and make sure that we'd allowed time for translation before we go to launch. We have a small translation team and we have to wonder how many thousands of words takes how many weeks to translate, so that had to be brought into the process. So the lessons learned, the obvious one, agree the template early and test it. That was our sort of big mistake from a content perspective. Set up governance early. This nicely follows on from the last session. We have style guides, we have tone of voice guides, we have various governance, we have workflow across our website. But with Course Finder, we hadn't really set that up and we hadn't really outlined that properly. So I would absolutely advocate, because that's something we're now doing. And checking the focus of your rewrite. For us, we came out of this feeling that potentially the focus was more on CMA than marketing, and that was at the loss of marketing and at the loss of maybe the voice we wanted to get out there to our students, and clarify processes and responsibilities. At the moment, course information is updated in the student record system by our registry administrative support team. They're not necessarily the correct people to be updating that information, only because they don't always understand where it's going to appear and what it's being used for. We didn't set out how all changes would be made, or how course approval changes will, what would happen if that, if that happened to change to a course, how does that change? How does that impact onto Course Finder? This is something, if we'd have had the time, we would have tried to clarify up front. And this may shock everybody, but we did not have a project manager for this project. I would say get a project manager if you can have a project manager, because at various aspects of the projects, I think it was me or Graham, and it was difficult with that many stakeholders, and we were only one element of it. So yeah, I'm going to pass you back to Graham to finish off.
Thanks, Jenny. So as you've heard, it was a really big project for us. And I'm really proud of what we achieved. In terms of benefits, we do have one source of course information at the university now, which is a massive step forward for us. We're confident that the content that's going out in the durable medium is the same as the content that's on the website, so that risk has been eliminated. And just risk of inaccuracy and the duplication of effort has, that's been resolved. What with rationalising all the systems down, we have far fewer points of failure. Everything's on one design, it's all mobile friendly, and it's all capable of being bilingual, and it's all on one domain, which is, I think, for me, the biggest thing. What we're going to do next, so at the moment we only publish 1 year of course, one set of courses at any one time, but very soon we'll be publishing 2 years, and from a technical point of view, because the API allows us to ask for different years, that's fine, we can do that, but the university hasn't historically maintained 2 sets of course information in the student record system, so that's required another process change. We're going to stop the process being so opaque within the university. As Jenny mentioned, the content was really rewritten with a CMA compliance eye, and now we want to revisit it and increase the marketing impact. We're going to give the right people access to edit that information in the student record system, and then I think the world is our oyster. We can look at doing things like generating the prospectus and who knows what else. So that's us. Thank you.